Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it loud enough for the couple at the next table to hear. No touch, no hugs, no intimacy until you apologize. The way her voice sliced through the noise at Olive Garden made even the waiter pause. She didn't look at me when she said it. She stared at her wine glass like she was already done with the conversation. I remember staring at her, not angry, not shocked, just empty. People always think betrayal comes as a scream, but sometimes it's just silence in your chest. Her name was Madison. We'd been together for years. We shared a home, bills, and quiet routines that used to feel like safety. Until lately. Lately, she'd been distant, sharp, always with her phone turned face down. I used to reach for her hand at night, and she'd flinch like touch itself was an inconvenience. That night at Olive Garden was supposed to fix things. I'd made a reservation, wore the shirt she liked, even grabbed flowers from Target on the way there. But instead of warmth, she gave me rules. No touch, no hugs, no intimacy until you apologize. For what? She never said. Just that I needed to think about how I made her feel. It was her favorite phrase lately. Used it like a shield. I sat there, watching her scroll through her phone while pretending to listen to me talk about my day. My food went cold before I touched it. When the check came, she didn't reach for her card. She just said, "You know what to do," and walked out, leaving me in that booth, alone with the sound of other people's laughter. That night, I didn't call her. I didn't text. Instead, I drove around for hours in my Ford F-150, just circling through the city, headlights cutting through empty streets. Every thought led back to one question. When did love turn into control? When I finally got home, her side of the bed was untouched. She'd fallen asleep on the couch, TV still on, phone glowing in her hand. I stood there for a long time, looking at her. I didn't feel love or anger, just a strange kind of peace, like something inside me had stopped fighting. I walked into the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, and for the first time in months, I said the truth out loud, quietly, but clear enough to hear it bounce back from the tiles. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry for letting it get this far." She wanted an apology. She got one, just not the kind she expected. Because that night, I didn't apologize to her. I apologized to myself. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Madison poured coffee, scrolled through her phone, and asked if I could pick up something from Walmart after work. Her tone was flat, mechanical, like the words were just air passing through her mouth. I nodded, said sure, and watched her walk out the door. The silence she left behind was heavier than her presence. That was the first day I stopped trying. I didn't text her through the day, didn't ask how she was, didn't check if she got home safe. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty about it. I sat in my truck during lunch, scrolling through photos on my phone. Pictures of us smiling, traveling, pretending. None of it felt real anymore. Her face looked different when I saw it through memory. Colder. By the time I got home, she was already there. Dinner was on the counter, but untouched. Her laptop was open on the couch, showing some conversation she hadn't minimized in time. A man's name. A coworker. Just the top line of a message. Last night felt different. You sure he didn't notice? My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't shake. I just stood there, staring at those words until they burned themselves into my brain. I closed the laptop quietly, like it didn't matter. Like it confirmed what I'd already felt in her distance, in the way she'd been withholding everything. Attention, affection, truth. When she came out of the shower, I didn't say a word. I didn't ask. She looked at me for a second, waiting for the usual confrontation that never came. Then she turned away, pretending to be unbothered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, the blue light from her phone flashing every few minutes. Each notification another small cut. And somewhere in that quiet, I made a decision. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't accuse. I wouldn't even ask for honesty. Instead, I'd do what she never expected, become silent. Not out of weakness, but out of strength. I realized something she never thought I would. I didn't need to fight to prove I was right. The next morning, I woke up before her. I left early for work, but I didn't go there. I parked at a Waffle House off the highway, got black coffee, and opened my notebook. Page 1. A clean start. That was the morning I stopped trying to fix us and started fixing me. For days, I played my role in silence. Same morning coffee, same routine, same empty words exchanged. Madison didn't notice the difference at first. She thought my quiet was surrender. But it wasn't. It was observation. I started watching her patterns. The late-night texts that made her smirk at the screen. The calls she took in the bathroom. The way she suddenly had work dinners twice a week when her office closed at 5. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. I didn't need confrontation. I needed confirmation. One night, after she fell asleep, I checked the shared phone bill. The number she texted most wasn't mine. It repeated like a heartbeat through every day. A coworker named Ryan. The same one from the laptop message. My chest didn't tighten. I just nodded to myself. The truth was finally visible. The next morning, I acted normal. I even offered to drive her to work. She smiled, like peace had returned. She didn't realize peace was just camouflage. At lunch, I parked outside her building, a Starbucks cup in my hand, pretending to scroll through emails. 20 minutes later, she walked out, laughing, glowing, alive in a way she hadn't been with me in months. Ryan was next to her. His hand brushed her back, and she didn't pull away. That was my moment of silence. I didn't get out, didn't confront, just watched. Because there's a power in restraint that most people never understand. The power to see everything clearly without acting on impulse. That evening, she came home early, acting affectionate for the first time in weeks. She hugged me, cooked dinner, even asked how my day was. It was a performance, and I played along. Because now I knew, this wasn't love. It was leverage. She wanted me calm, compliant, predictable. When she went to bed, I sat at the table, writing in my notebook. I wasn't writing feelings anymore. I was mapping timelines. Messages, days, expenses. I noticed small things. Her Uber receipts, new charges on our joint account. It all told the story she wouldn't say out loud. And while she slept soundly, thinking I was still the man waiting for her approval, I was already gone. Not physically, but emotionally, mentally, strategically. She thought she'd frozen me out. But in truth, I'd stopped needing her warmth long before she noticed the cold. The next phase wasn't about revenge. It was about control. Quiet, deliberate control, the kind that doesn't scream, but ends everything in silence. A week later, I disappeared. No note. No argument. Just absence. Madison woke up to an empty house. No coffee brewing. No truck in the driveway. No phone ringing. My phone was off, my cards disabled, my location gone. For the first time, she couldn't track me. That was deliberate. I drove for hours that morning, no destination in mind, just quiet highways and my thoughts. The radio stayed off. I ended up near the coast, checked into a cheap motel, and turned my phone face down on the table. The silence felt clean. It wasn't escape, it was detachment. By noon, the missed calls began. Her name filled the screen, over and over. Then the text came. Where are you? Why are you ignoring me? We need to talk. I didn't answer. She had built her power on reaction, and now there was nothing to feed on. That night, I sat by the water with black coffee from a Waffle House down the street. The air smelled like salt and diesel, and for the first time in months, I felt weight lift off me. I looked through my notebook again. Dates, names, patterns. Everything lined up. Ryan wasn't just a fling. He was leverage. Someone she'd used to make herself feel desired again. Someone who didn't know how disposable he was about to become. Back home, I knew the panic had started. She called my friends, my brother, even my boss. They all said the same thing. He's fine. He just needed space. That drove her crazy. She wanted a reaction, but I'd given her silence. And silence, I realized, was louder than anger. On the third day, she finally broke. The texts changed tone, less rage, more fear. I miss you. Can we fix this? Please just talk to me. I didn't reply. I let her feel the emptiness she'd created. I stayed gone for a week. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were over 100 unread messages. Most of them from her. Some from Ryan. His tone was nervous, short sentences, late-night timestamps. Something between them had shifted. My absence had exposed their connection. And that's when I saw it clearly. I didn't need to confront either of them. I just needed to let the truth unravel on its own. Because sometimes, the most powerful move isn't to fight the storm. It's to walk away so the storm collapses on itself. When I came back, I didn't tell anyone. I drove home at night, headlights off until I turned onto our street. Madison's car was there, but all the lights in the house were off except one, the kitchen. Through the window, I could see her sitting at the table, staring at her phone like she was waiting for a message that would never come. I parked down the street and watched for a minute. Then I drove past. Not stopping. Not yet. The next morning, I went back to work like nothing happened. People looked at me differently. Apparently, she'd told them I'd needed time to think. They had no idea what was really happening. That was fine with me. I needed quiet, not sympathy. A few days later, I found what I was looking for. A mutual friend sent me a photo, Ryan and Madison, leaving a restaurant together. He looked uneasy. She looked drained. Whatever fantasy they'd built was cracking. That's when I decided to make one precise move. Not out of revenge, but out of clarity. Ryan wasn't just her coworker. He was also responsible for a small client project tied to our company's internal accounts. And he'd been sloppy. Expense reports, fake invoices, subtle adjustments that didn't look suspicious unless you knew where to look. I did. I spent a night going through everything I could access, cross-checking details she didn't even know I had. It didn't take long to find what I needed: emails, timestamps, patterns. I didn't have to expose him directly. All I did was forward a summary, anonymously, to our company's compliance department. One quiet action. No fingerprints. 3 days later, the office was chaos. Ryan was under review for financial misconduct. Madison looked like a ghost walking through the hallway. She didn't know I was involved. She just knew that her world was falling apart, piece by piece. That evening, she called me. Her voice was small, shaky. "Can we talk?" she asked. I told her I was busy. That was all. I could almost hear the silence on the other end. The realization that she wasn't in control anymore. After the call, I drove to a Waffle House, ordered black coffee again, and watched the rain hit the window. I didn't feel victory, just calm. The kind that comes when you finally understand your own power, doesn't need to shout. Because the truth was simple. I hadn't destroyed her life. She had just lived long enough to see what she'd built collapse on its own. The fallout was quieter than I expected. Ryan was suspended within a week, pending investigation. The story spread fast around the office, but no one said his name out loud. It was the kind of scandal that made everyone whisper. Madison avoided eye contact with anyone. She'd walk in, keep her head down, and leave early. Her confidence, her armor, was gone. I kept my distance, acting like I didn't know a thing. I watched it all unfold from across the room, expressionless. Every time she caught my eye, she'd look away first. That used to be my role. Now it was hers. One evening, I saw her car parked outside my place. She didn't knock, just sat there for 20 minutes before driving off. I didn't go outside. I wanted her to feel the same uncertainty I'd lived with for months. That invisible ache of being close but unreachable. The next day, one of our colleagues stopped me in the hallway. "Rough week for her," he said. "She looks like she hasn't slept." I just nodded. No reaction. It was strange how quickly people adjusted their sympathy once the truth started to leak through the cracks. At home, I noticed small things changing. Her posts disappeared from social media. The smiling photos, the cryptic quotes, they were all gone. Friends stopped tagging her. Even the people she used to confide in were pulling away. It wasn't judgment, it was distance. Everyone senses when something's off, even if no one says it out loud. One night, she finally called again. Her voice was softer than I remembered. "I just want to understand what happened," she said. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch until she said my name again. When I finally spoke, my words were steady. "You already know what happened. You just didn't think I'd stop caring." She went quiet. Then she said, almost whispering, "I miss you." I didn't say it back. I just let her sit in that silence, the same silence she'd once used against me. But now it wasn't a wall, it was a mirror. After the call, I poured myself a drink and sat on the porch, watching the streetlights flicker against the hood of my car. I realized something important. She wasn't the enemy anymore. She was just a reflection of what I tolerated. And I wasn't that man anymore. By the second week, the silence between us had become a living thing. It followed her everywhere, into her work, her friendships, her sleep. I could see it in her face when she passed me in the hallway. She'd try to smile, but it never reached her eyes. Her confidence had drained away, replaced by something fragile and unfamiliar. For the first time, she looked small. I didn't hate her. That surprised me. I thought I would. But what I felt was colder, indifference. It was the kind of calm that comes when you've already burned through every emotion. I'd stopped trying to fix her, stopped trying to fix us. I was just watching. She started texting again. Short messages at first. Hope you're okay. Can we talk? Then longer ones, written like confessions. I never answered. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd flip it face down and continue what I was doing. I was detached, but not numb. Just aware. Aware that if I responded too soon, she'd slip right back into control. One night, around midnight, I saw her name light up again. This time, she didn't text. She called. I let it ring until the voicemail picked up. Her voice cracked as she spoke. I can't sleep. I just need to hear your voice. Please. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened my notebook, the same one that once held evidence, timelines, notes about her lies. Now, the pages were empty again. Clean. I started writing new things, plans, goals, ideas that had nothing to do with her. I wasn't rebuilding the relationship. I was rebuilding myself. Over the next few days, people started noticing the change. My boss mentioned I seemed more focused. Friends asked if I was seeing someone new. I wasn't. I didn't need to. The space she left behind wasn't loneliness. It was freedom. Meanwhile, Madison was unraveling. She'd stopped showing up to social events. Her coworkers whispered that she was going through something. Ryan was gone, transferred out quietly after his suspension, and she was left standing in the ruins of what she'd built. It was strange to see her fading from the center of everyone's attention. The same woman who once controlled every room now struggled to hold eye contact. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't revenge. This was balance being restored. For the first time, she was facing herself. And for the first time, I didn't feel sorry for her. The day she showed up at my door, I already knew she would. It was raining, hard enough that the sound drowned out her knock at first. When I opened the door, she was standing there in her coat, mascara running, holding her phone like it was some kind of proof she'd been trying to reach me. For a moment, I just looked at her, the woman who once set the rules, now standing outside mine. She said she just wanted to talk. I didn't move aside immediately. I kept my hand on the door, steady, unreadable. Eventually, I let her in. The house was clean, quiet, almost too calm. She noticed the differences right away, the reorganized shelves, the lack of photos of us. Everything looked the same, but felt foreign to her. She sat down at the table, hands trembling slightly. I don't even know where to start, she said. I didn't answer. She searched my face for some reaction, but there wasn't one. She kept talking, trying to fill the silence. She told me how things had fallen apart at work, how Ryan was gone, how people had started avoiding her. Every word came out like an apology disguised as explanation. I listened. That was all. And I think that scared her more than anger would have. Because she could see it in my eyes. She wasn't talking to the same man she used to manipulate. I wasn't waiting for her to say the right thing anymore. At one point, she asked if I hated her. I shook my head. No, I said quietly. You just don't exist where you used to. That line hit her. I could see it. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Not yet. She just nodded, like she finally understood something she'd been avoiding. When she left that night, I didn't walk her to the door. She hesitated at the threshold, maybe waiting for me to stop her, to say something that would give her hope. I didn't. I simply said, "Take care of yourself," and closed the door behind her. I stood there for a long time after, listening to the rain fade. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like clarity, like watching the end of a movie you'd already seen, knowing exactly how it would finish. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without thinking about her. Because something inside me had shifted permanently, she no longer occupied the center of my story. I did. After that night, Madison started showing up everywhere. Not in a desperate way at first, just small coincidences. I'd see her at the grocery store, pretending not to notice me in the next aisle. I'd catch her car idling near my street, headlights off. Once, she even came into the Waffle House where I usually stopped for coffee after work, sitting 3 booths away, staring into her cup like she was trying to work up the courage to say something. She never did. The silence between us had become something she couldn't bear anymore. It was eating her alive. I could see it in the way she carried herself, how she'd lost that air of control she once wore like perfume. Now she looked lost. Meanwhile, I kept moving. My routines had shifted. Mornings at the gym before work. Evenings reading or driving with no destination, windows down, quiet music. I was living like a man who'd finally stepped out of someone else's shadow. One Friday night, I got a text from her. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. No explanations. No excuses. Just those 2. I stared at it for a while before locking the phone and putting it face down. I didn't delete it. I didn't respond either. That was enough. A week later, a mutual friend told me she'd left her job. Rumors said she'd tried to fix things with management, but her reputation was already gone. Ryan had moved to another city. She had no one left to defend her version of the story. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. What happened to her wasn't revenge. It was the result of choices. She'd built her house of cards on control, and when I stopped playing the game, it collapsed. Sometimes at night, I'd remember the way she used to look at me, like I was something to manage, not love. Then I'd remember the night she stood in the rain at my door, asking if I hated her. And I realized hate takes energy. I didn't have that anymore. I'd evolved past it. But there was one thing I hadn't expected. The guilt. Not for what I'd done, but for how easy it was to detach once I finally saw her clearly. She'd become a stranger long before she walked out emotionally. And yet, part of me knew she wasn't finished. There was still one more conversation waiting. The kind that doesn't happen for closure, but for understanding what was lost forever. It was late afternoon when she finally showed up again. No warning, no text. Just a knock on the door that carried a kind of finality. I opened it to find Madison standing there, different. Not polished, not composed. Just real. Her makeup was minimal, her eyes tired, her voice quiet when she asked if she could come in. I let her. Not because I owed her anything, but because I was ready. She looked around the house like she was seeing it for the first time. Everything had changed. The air felt lighter, the space cleaner, calmer. She didn't belong there anymore, and we both knew it. She sat at the table, the same one where months ago I'd listened to her excuses, her silence, her rules. This time, it was different. She started talking slowly, like she was afraid of breaking something fragile. She said she'd lost herself, that she didn't realize how far she'd pushed me until the silence hit her back harder than she expected. She said she missed the man who used to reach for her hand first, the man who waited, forgave, tried. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak until her voice broke. Then I looked at her and said the only thing that mattered. That man's still here. He just doesn't belong to you anymore. She cried then, quietly, without drama. It wasn't the kind of crying that asks for pity. It was the kind that comes when truth finally lands. She nodded, whispering that she understood, that she deserved every moment of what came after. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to fight over. Before she left, she turned back and asked if we could ever start again, differently this time. I thought about it. About everything we'd been through, everything I'd learned in the silence. Then I said, maybe, but not the same way. Not on your rules. If it ever happens again, it'll be mutual. Real. Or not at all. She nodded slowly, wiped her face, and walked out. I watched her step into the fading sunlight, her car pulling away for what felt like the last time. When the door closed, the quiet that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was peace. That night, I sat outside with a cup of coffee, the sound of crickets filling the air. I thought about everything. The distance, the downfall, the strange way healing sneaks in when you stop chasing it. She said, no hugs, no touch, no intimacy until you apologize. And I did. Just not to her. I apologized to myself. And for the first time, that was enough. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.